Please do step up, and we look forward to hearing from you. How are you? Thank you for coming. All right. Tell us all about it.
Well, it's really fun and we get very active. And we learned a lot this year. And
yeah, it's just a new experience. And my grandmother and my mom played, so just wanted to continue the tradition.
Absolutely, absolutely. How many, now, you practiced, I didn't learn about this until fairly recently, so I don't know too much. You all practice on a regular basis?
We practice on Monday and Wednesday and after school until 4:30.
How many different games have you played in?
We've only played in one scrimmage against Westport Middle School.
Okay. Is that all that you've got scheduled, or are you open to join any more this season? When does the season end?
It's already ended.
You're in, you're done. So you're one and done, so to speak. So one game. Hopefully you're looking to expand upon that in future years.
Was it fun again?
yeah, it was really fun.
How'd you do?
Well, they won, but we had lots of fun doing it.
That's great.
So what positions do you play? Well, I'm a halfback, so I'm kind of defense.
I'm a forward, so I'm offense.
Do you like them?
Yeah.
How would you, what other sport could you say is very similar to field hockey? Soccer or?
No, it's kind of a mix of a lot of sports.
Yeah.
Ice hockey. I was a goalie.
Well, all right. Well, I appreciate you all coming in and talking to us about it. I hope you had fun, and I'm sure you're looking forward to doing it more next year. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Next item on the agenda is public input. Before we get into that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to move the superintendent report on the principal search just prior to the public input. I know there's some folks here tonight that based on a decision that we as a committee made last Thursday aren't on board with the decision that we made. And what I first would like to do is ask the superintendent as part of his report just to let us know where we are right now, and then I'll kind of give you feedback as to how this started, where it started, how we got to where we are, and then I'll allow you all to be able to make whatever comments you want after that. I thought it would be fair to talk about it a little bit first before we get to the public input. So, Dr. Power?
Yeah, well, as you just stated last week, we had a meeting where we did introduce the candidates based on that. You as a committee came out, you met, you voted on a candidate, and that's based on creating a contract for that candidate. And so tonight you have on your agenda an item to consider and vote on a contract for that individual. So that's where we are at this point.
When we began this back in September, early September, once our prior principal notified us right before school started he was departing, a process was put in motion that was headed up by our superintendent. The school committee didn't have any involvement in that process. Job was posted. I think we had 28 applicants altogether. That was eventually whittled down to 6. And then they were interviewed by a search committee. The 6 were. And then Dr. Power was presented with some finalists, which he wanted us to interview, which we did last Thursday. So when you're getting into the input and whatever it is you'd like to say about how you feel about that, I want you to understand that what occurred in that executive session isn't something that we can discuss. And I know that you're going to want to ask us questions about who, what, why, and where. But you need to understand that executive session minutes are sealed and we cannot discuss the terms and the items that took part in that executive session. Now, that might be frustrating for you, and I know that that's probably not what you want to hear from me right now, but it's a fact of life. So We are going to be considering a contract for the recommendation that was made last Thursday for Sonia Whip. Recommendation was made from the superintendent to us, and we voted unanimously to support his recommendation. So with that, if there's anybody who would like to make comment, and I see some faces that are here that I expect would like to say some things, and I'll recognize them. Brendan Moore.
Yes, how you doing, Tom? Committee members, my name is Brendan McKinnon. I'm sure you all know me. I have 2 children currently here at Wilbur McMahon and 1 at Portsmouth High School. I've been in Little Compton for 45 years, and I also graduated from here in 1980. I've been volunteer at the school, I've been a volunteer coach, and I'm also a parent volunteer. And I'm here tonight to voice my opposition to the principal's hiring process. Our superintendent, who had much input in this process, has been here for less than 1 year, and I wonder how long he's going to stay. In the last 10 years, the school has had 4 principals, 3 superintendents. The revolving door of principals needs to stop. The superintendent's message on the school department website, and I quote, "High-performing school districts share common thread, a strong network of parents, families, educators, and communities working together." That's not what we're getting here tonight with this hire. Our children, staff, school staff need continuity, leadership that is dedicated to this community and school. For our committee to place so much emphasis on the superintendent's opinion, who has been here for less than 1 year, is irresponsible, disgraceful, and short-sighted. I wish the process would have been more transparent and democratic. And in closing, I'm disgusted with the process, the lack of transparency, and the decision in general. A couple of years from now, I will be here, my kids will be here, but the superintendent and principal, in all averages, will probably be gone. And we'll have moved on. And we will be back at the drawing board, just like we are right now. Searching for a candidate like the one that has slipped through our fingers, who has dedicated himself to school. I am stunned, disgusted, and extremely disappointed.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak?
I'd just like to say I'm Jack's sister, had gone through the school system myself, had 4 children graduate from here, and I'm just so heartsick because, as I'm sure this new woman is a wonderful woman, Jack has dedicated close to 30 years at Tiverton High School, between the high school and middle school. I think he probably knows every child in this town. He's just got a wonderful way about him. He knows the questions to ask kids. And I'm just really, really so disappointed because I think he was told that he would have votes if he put his application in. It's not an easy process to go through. And I don't understand why you can't explain the voting. I don't think we need to know names on who voted for who, but you know, if there was a search committee, and then it went to the superintendent, and then the school committee, I'd kind of like to know a little bit about that. To have to be a unison vote. So I think if there's any more explanation you can give us, it would be helpful.
Anytime that you conduct any interviews for applicants, whether they be teachers, principals, superintendents, those interviews are conducted in executive session, all right? The applicants have the right to have those conducted in open session should they choose. More times than not, they choose not to have those in open session. So when they are conducted in executive session, it's not for public consumption. What is said, what is discussed.
Well, I don't need to know that,
But which is probably when you're looking at the reasoning behind the decision, and all we can do is executive session last Thursday. All we can do is come out, a recommendation is made, and we make a vote up or down. And that's it. And that's all that can be done in open session, and that's all that can be talked about. So everything else that went into making the decision, it's not something that we can discuss. And if I were to come out to you right now and give you reasoning behind that,
No, I don't need to hear people's reasons. I mean, I think I'm just so disappointed. I mean, I think the last time we had a community principal was Donald Gavin, who was here for, you know, and I think that's what a community is all about. Jack would be a great principal.
yeah. And as far as the school committee is concerned, our only, with the superintendent, that's the decision that we make. We as a committee handle that process, we vet out all the candidates. There is a search committee that exists, but it includes the school committee. When you start talking about principal position or teachers, it's handled by the superintendent. They're the ones who are responsible for making all the hires within the school department. And those are made on recommendations to us. Now, in this particular case, we ended up sitting in with the finalists, which is atypical. All right, typically it's just the superintendent comes to us making a recommendation, we give it up or down. If we give it a down, then you gotta find someone else. So that's what we were faced with. So in terms of looking to go against what the superintendent, was recommending to us, and trust me, there was a lengthy discussion about what we were doing. We didn't take this decision lightly. It wasn't something that we dismissed. It was gut-wrenching. Believe me when I tell you that. And our responsibility here as a school committee is to look at the function and the operation of this school. And the position of principal of this school has to wear many hats. Okay? And so I think that there's things that we had to take into consideration. And based on the feedback that we were getting from our superintendent, and we had our interim principal in there as well, we had to make a decision. And it was a difficult one. So I feel your frustration, I feel your disappointment, and I do.
This is what I'm talking about, is exactly what you're saying. Why is there so much stake in the superintendent, who hasn't even been here yet? He doesn't know any of the teachers, any of the staff, the students, I'm sure. And he has so much stake in who gets selected here? That doesn't make any sense to me. You guys have stake in the community, the school committee. I mean, I'm stunned by this. Did it have to be a unanimous decision?
Does it have to be unanimous?
Did it have to be unanimous?
No, it doesn't have to be a unanimous decision. It has to be just a majority.
I'm Maureen Rigo, and I also, I'm a sister of one of the candidates who ran for the principalship. I just want to point out my firstborn came to school in 1989 or 90. He was here for 9 years, kindergarten through 8, and there were at least 7 or 8 principals. And I'm counting the interim principals too, and someone can do the research, but it was almost every year. It's been going on for a long time, and I think it hurts the school that we don't have someone here with a little bit of vested community, interest. I think it hurts, because every time you get a new leader, you're starting from square one again, introducing him first to the teachers and then to the students, and they're implementing what they would like to see in a school system. And I'm sure what Mr. Arruda just finished, is not even being carried out anymore, because once he leaves with his ideas, unless somebody really, really thought some of those ideas were great, a lot of the ideas go with him too. So it's how do you grow a great school when there's so much turnover? not, and I don't know if the new principal here is here, but I hope she stays for a little while. And I think it's something that, going forward, I think the process should be considered. So that's what I'd like to say.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else like to get up and say anything?
I just want to underscore, I feel it's very important for a member of the school leadership to be a part of the community. The superintendent, it's my understanding, as a retired Rhode Island educator, can only ever be part-time and hired on a year-to-year basis. So if he's responsible for making a decision, I don't know how many years this principal contract will be. There's no saying that this superintendent, who's been here for a year, is going to stay as long as a principal is. I mean, I think we need to keep that in mind. I also would have liked the opportunity, as with the superintendent search, for the community members to meet the candidates before a decision was made. And finally, I think it might make sense to consider waiting for the new school committee to approve the contract. I don't know when the new school committee members come on board, but they're the ones who are going to be here when the new principal is. I don't know if there's any reason to postpone that vote. If that's something you thought about.
So I'd like to introduce myself, Sid Wardell, for those of you that don't know me. Also 47 years, excuse me, I'm Jimmy Candy. 47-year resident in town, 4 children going through the school. I've been a part of government here in Little Compton, both good and bad. Sat in your seat pretty close. There's a couple of things I'd like to talk about tonight, and I'd like to hit on a couple of things that you just said, Tom. One, you said the superintendent does the hiring. Is that accurate?
They make recommendations to,
I asked the question. Does the superintendent do the hiring?
we make appointments, Sid.
Okay.
Okay, so the superintendent goes through the process, whether it's a teacher or in this case, a principal, and vets them out. And based on what we've advertised, what we need, what they feel we need in this school, they come to us and say, this is what I'm putting before you. You can either, approve it.
So can you answer the question I'm asking? Does the superintendent do the hiring, or does the school committee do the hiring?
The school committee approves and makes the appointment of the recommendation from the superintendent.
Nope. Read it. If you want the law, I'll give it to you. The school committee has the authority to hire and fire. He has no authority within. If you don't know that, as a school committee, you need to figure that out. That's my point for number one. Number two, what you're doing here, what we're talking about, and we're listening to people who are concerned about the process. Your main priority is the kids. Your second priority should be open government. Okay? You have indicated on 3 separate occasions from the agendas that I've read that you've gone to executive session on the 42-46-5A1. Do you know, each of you, I'll ask you, do you know what is allowed under A-1 to go into executive session?
Yes,
You do?
I do.
Okay. Could you tell me?
Could you repeat your question?
42-46-5A1 allows for certain reasons to go into executive session.
Correct. We have different reasons that we go into executive session. One is for the discussion, I believe the statute or the one that you're speaking of now is for the discussion of personnel and we have it on our thing every time. The discussion of personnel. And
Every time that we enter an executive session, our attorney will be here. Okay, so when you're going to talk about either some of the job performance, or in this case, a hire, and their background and their qualifications, and you're going to go through that process, is he going to claim that we're doing that illegally?
I'm asking you if
I'm
you
asking
know
you.
what, but yeah, I'm telling you, you are. and I'm telling you, there's rulings by the Attorney General's office that says, and here's -1, specific to why you claim you went into executive session. Any discussion of job performance, character, physical or mental health. That's it. That's -1. Job performance in a hiring process, that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about somebody you've already hired. Okay? So if you're being told that that covers why you went into executive session on 2 previous occasions, both with different reasons, one for discussion of finalists and the position, that has nothing to do with -1. The second one, discussions of term of principal appointment and compensation. Neither of those are allowed under -1. Okay? Nowhere, the town of Little Compton, any hire that has ever been done by the town council has always been in open session. Give it an opportunity for people to hear. Why do you do that? To vet that. There's all kinds of rumors around relationships in this particular hire. We've heard from family members that are out here. I've heard of relationships that this superintendent knew this principal directly by a person that they're married to or best friend. Those are the types of things that should be vetted. If somebody knows somebody, it's not a big deal, but that should be put out to the public. So I don't believe that you have gone into executive session first with an eye towards open government. Secondly, I don't think you've gone under the correct pieces what's allowed for a hiring process. Nowhere does it discuss hiring process under executive session.
I'd love to be able to answer you, but I'm going to have to defer to the gentleman.
Absolutely.
on my left. Kevin, can you speak to what's being...
Yeah, the subsection 1 of the Open Meetings Law statute, which is very frequently referred to as personnel, as sort of a generalization of it. There's basically 2 parts to it. One, it has some specific notions. I've never interpreted that to exclude discussions about potential hires, because you have to read it in context with the rest of subsection 1, which talks about any person who's going to be discussed in executive session has to be notified in advance in writing and advised that they can require that the discussion be held in open meeting. If they don't do that, they have an absolute right to have discussions about them held in executive session. In fact, the statute, the same subsection you're citing, specifically says that if there's a failure to provide that notification to the person discussed, that they're going to be discussed, that any action taken by the body, in this case the school committee, would be null and void. So they have rights too. And the statute tries to find that part in particular, but other parts, whether you talk about collective bargaining, litigation, particular students, investigative proceedings, the common thread running through that is other people have rights too. It's not just transparency and the public's rights. The individuals who are being discussed and their personal information is also subject to protection, and the statute recognizes that. So you and I could argue all night about what this means, what it allows. That's my opinion. That's my firm's opinion. And I would suggest that's what most lawyers think about how this works.
I can't offer anything more to it than...
And there are also opinions of the Attorney General's office that in abundance of caution, those types of meetings should be held in the open. So yes, I agree. If you don't tell the person you're going to talk to them about them, you can't. You shouldn't. But if you're telling them you are going to talk about them and you're at your final stage, right? So the intent of this is with an employee that you have, that's one subsection. But when you're doing a hire, you're hiring them based on the public. You're hiring them not to serve just the needs of the committee, but the whole community as a whole. There comes a point when you need to vet that person in public. And that's what the open government is meant to do. So yes, there comes a time, and you know what? Somebody who's leaving a job that they've been at and they're seeking other employment, that's the reason for that. We don't want to hurt them at their job that they're at now. But there comes a time where, listen, they became an applicant to you. There comes a time and responsibility as a school committee that you vet that person within the community. That hasn't been done. You've done it under the guise of secrecy. And in fact, the meetings and the agenda and the minutes from these meetings are supposed to be published at the next meeting. Right? There's a time frame when to do them and or the next meeting. That's how the wording says. You haven't done that. You got 3 meetings piled up on this one. They're not on the Secretary of State's website. I looked. So if I haven't been here at the meeting, I can't keep up with what's going on. I have an expectation of open government to be able to find that information. You failed to do that. So, yes, you may have the opportunity to go under executive session, but you did it. You've got people here, and there's a lot of family here. Geez, you get going on the McKinnons, you're going to be here all night. But I respect that, because you know what? They chose this community for a reason, just like I did. And if I can't sit here and ask you questions and expect that you as a school committee at some point want to show me who your applicant is because you're standing behind it with a unanimous vote, although there's only 4 of you here tonight, what is the community to expect? And we have the track record. We have the notation of nobody from town stays. Come here for a couple of years and leave. You know what my hardest job was? When I was chief of police here, and I had to go to the Commons lunch or Woolworth's store and face the people of my community. Get somebody from out of town, you don't see them. Don't see them around. You guys chose to be on the school committee. You have to see the people. Well, you ought to put those people up in front that you're vetted to have to represent this community, because they're representing you and watching over their kids. I don't have any kids here now. Grandkids getting ready. That's all I have.
Yeah, any minutes that are, well, I guess it gets back to your point whether you feel as though that what we're doing in executive session is legal or not. But any minutes that are approved in executive session are sealed. They're actually sealed when you come out of executive session and go back into open session. So those wouldn't be minutes that we would be releasing to the public anyway from executive session, correct?
You have the right to release those at any time. You agree?
Yes, but they're not.
Do you intend?
Unless we have to vote to unseal those minutes.
Correct. And once this process is done, you should vote to open them. It's over and done with. Is that your intent?
I'm not going to sit here and tell you right now whether it's my intent or not.
Will you consider that?
Well, you know what? There's a new school committee that's going to be coming in here, and maybe they can vote to do this.
So that's the buck. The other people that are here, do you intend to bring that and open that up to the public? I would like to ask each of you.
If somebody came to me and asked me to vote on opening the minutes, I would first ask that individual why, and then I would approach our attorney to make sure that I was within legal bounds to do so. And if I was within legal bounds to do so, absolutely.
You know, at some point when you're discussing applicants, all right, in this case, an executive session, I mean, discussions you get into talking about what someone may or may not provide. Is that something you want to have in open session? You want to start poking holes in people about what they, what their shortcomings may be?
By your opinion,
No, well, it's not, no, wait a minute,
We're looking for transparency. That's what anyone's looking for. That's what all we're looking for is transparency, and not secretive behind closed door decisions on so-and-so. So let them know that it's going to be an open meeting. Let the candidate know. When they want to show
Can I say something on that? Brendan, before every executive session where we're discussing personnel, those people are notified and asked We have to get it from them before we can have it in executive session or open session, and it's their choice to tell us where they would like the discussion. It's protection for the individual. It's not our choice
But
whether
not
we
if
do
you
it or not.
notify them that it's gonna be an open meeting. That's what
Or
you
ask
said.
them to be open.
No, they're asked whether they would like discussion in open session or an executive session. And we conduct our meeting based on what the answer is to us. We don't choose that. The individual chooses that.
There's a difference between an employee and a prospective hire. Huge distinction.
Kevin?
Well, that's your opinion, but that's not the way I interpret the statute. This is a clash here, I think we can all agree to that. It's a clash here between an individual's rights and the public's right to transparency. And the law tries to find a balance there. So, I don't know what else to tell you.
I don't know what to tell you really.
You know, so for purposes of what we do as a committee, when we go into executive session, all the agendas are reviewed by our attorney. To say, yes, you're within your rights to be able to do what it is you're doing. Or if we're not, I mean, we're advised as to what we need to do. I mean, I'm not an attorney, either one of us up here are, so.
Tom, the attorneys don't have the best interest of the public, okay? They have their own interest for the school department, okay? We want transparency so everyone knows there's no hidden agenda, okay? Once you get lawyers involved, it's gonna cost you money.
But I think the point that's being missed is that the law is made to also protect the applicants. So it's not just about, it's a balance between giving you your right to know and also being able to protect the people who are applying for the
But
job.
not, and just like you just said, not if they're notified ahead of time that the meeting will be a public meeting. That's what he just said.
Did you ask the applicants to go have it in an open session?
We didn't ask them. We notified them it was going to be an executive session. We should have an open session.
So here's your position. You should be faulting to be transparency about it. If you push to have that in open, somebody's shortcomings, quite frankly, should be known. I don't even understand using that as a reasoning. When you're hiring somebody, you are vetting them. Okay? You vetted those individuals through the principal, superintendent, excuse me. So that's why not have the public? You can tell the public that they can view and can't ask questions. You can set parameters, but the faulting should be open government, not to close. And you didn't even ask to have it in open. So why didn't you?
Most of what occurred during this process was handled from the superintendent's end. Okay, it was a superintendent committee, all right, that he comprised. It was not a subcommittee of the school committee. It was made up of parents, it was made up of teachers. And based upon that, recommendations were made to him, and he in turn made a recommendation to us. And for those who feel as though that although our superintendent has only been here for a year, that we aren't bound in some way, shape, or form putting stock in what he says we need for this school, I think is unfair. I'm not a teacher, I'm not a career educator. For those who you are, for those of you who are, you have a leg up. But aside from Ms. Bugera, none of us are teachers. So what is it that we need right now today to run this school? And what do we need to run this school? And that stuff is put forth when we post the job, post the position. And all of the criteria that are listed in that job description, of which I have right here, those are the things you have to look at. All right, now, go ahead.
Hi, Kathy Wardell. I'm a member of the community. My son Matthew goes to school here. I'm also the board liaison for Board of Trustees of the local borough. Very familiar with open meeting law. It might be a different state, but it's very similar. I totally understand having, actually in the process right now of a presidential search, and I'm the liaison for that search. I completely understand the necessity of interviewing in executive session. However, I can also understand the concerns of the community, because as we've done it, and this is on a presidential level, what we're doing is after the executive session interviews, and again, confidentiality, some people do not want to be made known that they're candidates for a particular position, and you have to respect that confidentiality of the applicant. However, what you do is at a point, you bring the finalists to the campus or to the community, and that is conducted in open session. Now again, every college, every school has their own ways of doing things, but the finalists should be brought to the community so the community can get to know them. And then absolutely, the decision is made again in an executive session as to the hire of which candidate. However, at least that allows the community to be able to see and meet the final candidates. Now, I'm going for transparency on the sake of the community, and I'm also going for the necessity for executive session and for confidentiality. But I think maybe the system, the procedure needs to be changed a little bit. So that's my take on it. And again, in the middle of a presidential search, we are going to open up our final candidates to our entire college community, the Board of Higher Ed, the Secretary of Education, and the Commissioner of Higher Education. That will all be conducted in an open meeting. The Board of Trustees will then later conduct in an executive session the decision for the final candidate. But at least it allowed the entire college community to attend meetings and meet with the finalists. And it's as important as a community college as it is to my own community. I would like to get to know who the principal would be before we hire them. And if you come up with 3 or 5 or however many finalist candidates, and they're all very qualified, at least you can say the community was involved. And it wasn't done completely in an executive session. Okay? That's all I have to say.
I'd like to say something about our practices with interviewing and our search committees. I was in charge, I was the charge for the superintendent search committee that was conducted in the spring of this year. We had 6 open meetings, which were taped by Mr. Allen or a family member of his. We invited the community to come to all of our meetings. Of those 6 meetings, we had 1 person at 1 meeting come. At the end of that process, we asked that our finalist candidates come and be interviewed, as you're suggesting, by the school committee first. In that case, the school committee was searching for the candidate. That was our committee. We interviewed our candidates, we brought it down to a few, and we had an open session. We had a public forum that we advertised. We sent out on school listserv within the school. We put an ad in the newspaper, and we sent home flyers with the kids. We had 2 parents come.
I understand that, and that's what the superintendent.
I understand that. I do, I understand
what
that.
they want, what the community wants, is to be more involved in the principal search. Because not for nothing, I never, as a parent, my son's in 7th grade, I haven't had an awful lot to do with the superintendents over the years. I've had a lot to do with the principal, though.
I understand that, and I think that
that's the person I am going to be most in contact with. When I call the school, it's the principal's office. It's not the superintendent's office.
I understand that.
Why did you change the process?
Right. Why
Why did you change the process?
This was not a function of the school committee. The search was not our search.
Yes, it is.
This was the hiring,
No,
and
it's not.
according to our school policy, according to the policy
It's not.
within our school manual that's been approved by prior school committees, our process is for hiring, and our policy manual is available both online and in the office and in the library. Our policy, which is our guidelines, what we have to work with, is that our superintendent does all of the search and all of the hiring. That is our policy. It may not be the law, Sid, but this is the policy that guides us. And one of the things that we do is we write policy. And I
And
think that
policies can be changed.
I agree. I am not disagreeing with you at all. I think that that's a policy that needs to be looked at. I think that that's a policy that's important to be looked at. But to this point, in this search, we had to follow a policy for what we have written for us. If we didn't, for all the dismay here, and believe me, there's a lot of dismay up here too. If we didn't follow our policy, we have meetings with just as many people doing this to us for not following our policy. We're volunteers. We're elected volunteers, but we're doing our best to do what we believe is right for the town. And I can
maybe
speak
a
for myself.
policy needs to be changed.
And I agree. I think that
Right.
policy is something that we need to look at. I think this is a perfect example of something that is not particularly right that we need to look at. And I would suggest that our very next meeting, one of the things that we do, I don't know who will be the policy committee at that point, it's going to be a new committee, but I would suggest that whoever that person is, that's one of the very first things that we look at and as our policy. And one of the constant things that we do at all of our meetings is we look at policy. And when something comes up where we need to make a change, we don't put it off on the back burner. We try to attack it right away. This was not something that we can't look at everything, but I promise you that I'll make sure that this is on the next agenda to make sure that we have policy as for our next policy committee to be looking at this, writing this, and getting input from the community. And everything we do, we are asking. I can tell you that we have tried painstakingly to not be anything but transparent. I will speak for myself only in saying that I have any decision that I make is with transparency in mind. I have no intent, no desire to do anything for any of you that I wouldn't, I won't say anything to any of you that I wouldn't say to anybody else. There's nothing but transparency within this committee. We are not intending to be behind closed doors. We have listened to anything that anybody has said to us, and we try to do the right things. We try to ask the right questions. We ask of legal opinion. None of us are attorneys. We do our own research. We look at the statutes. We try to make the best decisions we can. And sometimes the decisions are very hard decisions, and I can't apologize for that. I just have to say that I'm doing my best to be as transparent as I can for you.
Do you have any idea how long that policy's been in place? Like, is there any way to find
Yeah.
that out?
Well,
I'm
no,
wondering back
I
in
don't know.
1989,
We can-
if they've been doing this right along.
That
Somebody
policy-
should have seen that it wasn't working.
I
the
would
way-
guess that was last reviewed in 2014. My guess, I'm not telling you that that's when it was. My guess is that that policy was last reviewed in 2014. Probably, they did a lot of them during the summer of that year. We are trying to, Peg and I are a current policy committee. Peg will not be here at our next meeting, and we will have new officers, so I don't know how the policy committee will be with the new committee, but we have, at every meeting, discussed policy. And we're just two people, and we try to get all of the input that we can get for any of the policies that we're working on. And with every meeting, we have our subcommittee meeting, and we advise the committee with what we're doing our research on. So I would suggest that the next policy committee, whether it be me or whether it be other members of the committee, that would be the first priority, because obviously it's something that's very important to the community. And I agree with you all that if you want to meet the principal before, that's a wonderful idea. I don't think that that's something that's, I don't think that's something that should be secret.
Well, we did that.
Can I just clarify something though? You keep going back that the policy says the superintendent hires. He doesn't.
No, I'm not saying.
What you said,
superintendent
you've said it, continue, you've all said, or the two that have spoken, have said that the superintendent, the policy is that the superintendent has the review. He brings about the procedure through and brings candidates to you.
Yes.
You have the hire and fire. Okay? You've said it a few times that it's the superintendent. It's not. It's you. It's on your
The
back.
superintendent is the search.
That's correct. And so with the search committee, did the search committee come back? They came back with, you gave them 6 names, it was narrowed down to 6?
We didn't give any names
Okay, the search committee was narrowed to 6 by who?
by the search committee.
Oh, okay. So the search committee then took those 6 names, they conducted interviews, and whatever their follow-up is, you don't know.
They conducted
Yes.
interviews.
They conducted interviews.
All right?
And they presented those 6 names to the superintendent. Did they give them a ranking? Or did they just say, here's the 6 and we think these 6 should move on?
We're not aware of how the,
Okay, can we ask?
yeah, you can ask.
There was no ranking. There were actually 6 candidates, 5 of them interviewed because one of them took a job. Based on those interviews, I interviewed 2 of those candidates. Based on those interviews, I brought those 2 candidates to the school committee interview. Based on that interview, there was a candidate who was recommended for the position. And I just want to clarify that the candidates had the opportunity, if they wanted to have their interviews in public. They chose to be in executive session.
Really? The chairman just told me they weren't asked.
No, they are.
So I would like to clarify. So I get that clarified.
Every person that is going to be talked to in executive session is given the option of having their discussion in open session. We have to.
So you asked them that? I asked you, and you said no.
No, the discussion was whether we told them we were going to do this in open session. We told them we were going to do it in executive session. That's where we started.
So you didn't ask them if you could do it in open?
They get a
Yes,
letter.
we
They
asked-
get a letter. They get a letter that says you have the right to have this in open session or executive session. You have a choice. And the people opted to take the executive session. If they wanted to have an open session, they can say, I choose to have this in open session. I do not want to be interviewed. I don't want to have a discussion in executive session. 99% of the candidates that get in that situation opt for executive session because that's what they want to do. If they want an open session, they can have it in open session.
We did not
You
ask
don't have
them.
to agree to that. You could be at an impasse at that point.
We could say to them, hey, we want to do this in open session.
Correct.
We didn't ask that.
Thank you.
I think, and I may be wrong, and I'll defer to the attorney,
That wasn't our
that
first-
they have the option. We don't have they have the option to say, I want it in open session.
And if they choose no, and you say yes, you're at an impasse, and you have to come up with a decision. Either we want it in an open, but you didn't ask them, because you didn't ask to be in open. So at that point, you have an impasse, and you have to make a decision. You either decide, this candidate isn't going to go forward, because we want to have this out for the public, or you choose to go into executive. That's the hiring. I've been part of the hiring in town of Little Compton for 25 years.
The law, and again, it's the subsection 1 you've been talking about. It specifically requires that the person be notified in advance that they're going to be discussed in writing and advised, and this is a quote from the statute, that they may require that the discussion be held at an open meeting. They referring to the person being discussed. So it's clearly in the statute the call of the candidate or the personnel being discussed. It's their decision. Because again, there's this attempt in the law to balance their rights with the public's rights.
If you're talking about one of 3 things, job performance, character, physical or mental health.
We'll have to disagree on that. That's
It's
not
in-
the way, that's
That's not what it says.
That's what it says, that's not what it means.
That's lawyer speak.
No, you have to read, you're taking 3 or 4 words out of context, you have to read it in the whole context. I'm talking about subsection 1, read the whole thing.
I did.
That's not what
Any
it means.
discussion of job performance, comma, character, comma, or physical or mental health of a person or persons, provided that such person or persons affected shall be notified in advance of writing and advised they may require the discussion to be held in open session. You have to meet the first one of 3 criteria before you go on. That's why there's subsection 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You have to meet one of them, just like litigation to buy land. You don't want that out in the open, but you have to meet the requirements of that subsection. I say to you, and you go to the Attorney General's office, they have rule that says a pre-hire does not fall under the same criteria when you're talking about somebody's job performance, character, or physical, mental health. That's what it says.
I guess to answer your question about, we did not approach them with the thought of doing this in open session. That wasn't our first presentation to them. We said we're going to do this in executive session. If you want to have it in open session, we can.
And so you're doing it behind closed doors, this is what you have.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
I'd like to speak and say that I've worked in both a large institution in personnel and in Massachusetts for 15 years, of which 5 were for the federal government and 10 were for the state government. This was part of my job, and after that, I went to industry. And it was the same everywhere. We followed the same statutes, and it's to protect the individual's rights, not to have it done publicly. For if that individual has been informed, as you did, it is his right to make the decision. And he obviously, in this case, made the decision to keep it in executive session, as most people would do. Now, the criticism is coming somehow. I don't know what he told the people who are here tonight, whether they disagree with what he reported. He can certainly report what happens in executive session, although most people don't choose to do that. I just think, I happen to think you've done a very good job. I think all of you have been fair and square. And I don't know what else you could have done, because you've asked him and he has said, no, I don't want it public. It could have started in public, but that wouldn't change the final decision. So that's what I just happen to think. That it's very sad, and I'm very sympathetic because I have.
I'd like to not get into the conversation from one person to another.
I'd like to just indicate that I worked with this individual's father, and that's the highest regard.
Mr. McKenzie, I'd like to not get into that type of.
Okay, but that's all I have to say. It just simply is the law, and you do it to protect the individual.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Is there anything else on the agenda that somebody wants to speak to?
Could you tell us where you stand since we don't know?
We made an appointment last Thursday, pending a contract being worked out and presented to us, which is getting done tonight. And we're going to be moving into an executive session to discuss that in terms of that contract, which will be brought out and divulged to you and made public after we meet. So that's where we are tonight. So we have to approve the contract tonight. Yes, sir.
So how long is the contract for? Did you disclose that?
18 months.
18 months. So we're going to do it for a year and a half.
We haven't even discussed
We
the
haven't
contract.
discussed it yet, so.
But that's what's proposed.
But that's what's going to be proposed, though, behind executive session.
Correct.
Can we ask?
I don't want to get into terms of the contract.
No, I don't want to ask that question. Is there anything you can tell us about the potential principle that you're going to look at the contract for now?
Oh, we have to talk about the individual without her prior knowledge. We have to, by law, notify her if we're going to speak on her publicly.
Okay.
For the same reasons that were indicated.
Well, same reason you did that.
Can I ask a question? What is done in a background check for your applicants?
They were
In
coordinated.
general, I'll have to talk about what's done in a background check.
Again, we have policy on that.
If somebody is currently employed in a school department than they would, if they break service for a year, you have to have a background check, you have to have fingerprints and everything. If they are employed in another school department continuously and they don't break service for a year, then you don't have to go back and redo the fingerprint process. But if they break service, they have to have fingerprints.
So you choose as a committee not to get up-to-date yesterday's information you're using potentially years old?
Well, if this individual working in a school department close by had any problems with the law, they wouldn't be employed. Because you, just like Little Compton, if I, on the way home, got a DWI, you'd know about it tomorrow. There's no place that they're going to hide. They've been employed for 12 years. They've had a spotless record. But like I said, if they broke service, they would have to get fingerprinted, as I had to be fingerprinted when I came in here, because I broke service for a year and I wasn't fingerprinted.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? All right. Thank you very much for your thoughts on that. Mr. Gagnon, how do you want to follow that up? Finance.
Well, we've completed 4 months of the year and attempted to put a projection out there as to where we would stand compared to budget. These numbers are continually changing, obviously. For example, we did get the first quarter cost of tuition in, and we have 124 students. And the tuition is $94.2988 versus our budget of $95.04, and we had 129 students there. So we're going to have a significant savings from budget of about $57,000. Unfortunately, our out-of-district special education, which we had budgeted for 75, will be closer to 150 because of the increase in the number of students that require those services.
However, let me also say that there are 2 students we're in dispute with our DCYF. Hopefully, we will have them take all of our expenses. They don't live in town. DCYF has them in town. A federal attorney in the region who's going in front of DCYF to argue that we are not residents of the town. It is a long process, even though it's so obvious.
So just briefly on the revenue side, we're looking at about $16,000 more in revenue than we had budgeted. Some of that is coming from some miscellaneous grants that we received, and also an increase in Medicaid reimbursement. With the additional sped out of district tuition, we will see some Medicaid reimbursement from those payments. So we're anticipating a little bit of an increase there. Salary should be pretty much on target in terms of budget. Fringe benefits, we're looking at, as we discussed during the budget process, we had a significant increase in our Blue Cross premiums. So we're looking at about $36,000 increase in our medical premiums, which we were notified back in, I think it was May, that we came up with that particular number. So we're looking at an increase in premium costs on our medical, around 36. In the other operating, technical and professional services, we're looking at a decline of about $16,000. A lot of that savings is going to be a reduction in legal expenses that we have projected. We had budgeted something a little bit higher than what we anticipate we're going to be spending in that particular area. On the purchase property services, we're looking at roughly about $3,000 over what we had budgeted, and some of that is in the rubbish disposal area. The costs of disposal have gone up, and I didn't anticipate that in the original budget, so we're going to be looking at roughly around $3,000. There again, there are other expenditures in there for maintenance repairs that until we go through the season, we're not going to know whether we're going to be spending that money. The big area we talked about are the purchase services, which includes all our out-of-district tuition. I think we're pretty good. I'm waiting for the Newport regional billing to come in. I'm anticipating that we're going to be able to offset a little bit more of that with some of our IDA grant funds. At this point, the Department of Education should approve the federal grant awards very shortly. So we'll see how much money we can use to offset some of those payments to Newport Regional. On the supply side, right now we're looking at something that's right on budget. We had budget around $302,000. That's what we're looking at as a projection. And the only other area that we should see a little bit of a increase over budget might be in the technology hardware. We had some upgrades that we had to make to the network that might put us slightly over budget. There may be some expenditures in there we'd be able to fund with the federal grant, the rural education grant that came in. So we're going to take a look at that. Right now, we'll be looking at roughly around $11,000 in the budget next year. We stand at the end of October.
Thank you, John. Anybody have any questions or comments? Moving on, committee reports. Holly.
So the last posted meeting, they went over SAT scores and the merits of the fact that both Compton high school sophomores and juniors now take the SATs. The sophomores are paid for by high school, and they take it in school, and the juniors are now paid for by the state to take it within the school. So it's hard for them to track yet because they haven't had a cohort go all the way. But from the little bit they've seen from the kids from last year to this year, they believe that it improves their scores. That was
All right. Patrick is not here with the Recreation Committee. Peg, do you have health and wellness?
Yes, we had a meeting October 17th, I believe, with Karen Leverow, who is representing RIDE and Health and Wellness. We are going to have to look at upgrading our policy. That will be for the new wellness chair to follow through. And there's going to be a lot of upgrades that's going to have to be done. There's going to have to be more of a dovetailing with health education and the requirements that are being made by state and federal regulation. So we had the next meeting is obviously delayed because I didn't wish to make meetings for somebody else. So the new chair, whoever the new chair of the Wellness Committee is, they will then set the next 4 meetings.
Thank you, Peg. Board, policy committee.
At this point, we need to look at the next policies. Ironically, that we need to discuss the next policies, and I would suggest that, given the discussion that we're having tonight, that we look at the policy on procedure for hiring in the school district.
All right. Thank you. Discussion items, update on scholarship process.
yeah, I just done.
Go ahead.
So after going through a couple scholarship cycles here, I've come up with some 4 points that I think maybe our new policy committee, whoever it may be, could sort of work into the scholarship process. I'd like to see the forms online, fillable online, so that the information could be redacted, so there could be no identifying information about the students. I'd like to see it be a larger committee rather than just 2 school committee members. I'd like the process to start earlier with most of the high school students students are applying for scholarships a few months ahead of when we start the process might help us get a better pool. We didn't get all the kids, maybe if they were within the usual cycle. And I would like to see a rubric of criteria for each of the 5 scholarships.
All right.
Have you looked at, do you have a rubric in mind?
Yeah, it would have to be tailored to each individual scholarship, depending on what, like, is there one for nursing and teaching? You know, so that, it would have to be tailored for each one.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public input for any agendas or items that are not on the agenda. Go ahead.
On behalf of the Wellness Committee here at the school, I'd like to thank Peg Vidiara for her service as the chairman, and she did a great job, and thank you very much for everything that you do. Leadership and keeping us on track and spirited conversation. Sometimes we do always agree. Cupcakes come into play there, but thank you, Peg, very much.
Thank you, Jay.
Go ahead.
On the same note, I would like to acknowledge and thank Tom Alder and Peg Guevara for their service on the school committee. You've both been here for 4 years. This is your last official meeting, and I just want to go on record as the vice chair of the committee. We appreciate your service, the community appreciates your service, and we wish you all of the best in what you are doing in your future endeavors, and we hope to see you out in the gallery in the future.
Second minister's dedicated.
But thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Tom, I'd like to say almost the same thing. We've learned a lot in the last 2 years from both of you, and it's been an adventure. And in a weird way, we're kind of like, I don't know, yesterday was like the final step, but I wish you both well, and I consider both of you friends after a long and difficult 2 years, so thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jared. I appreciate it. Anybody else have anything like that? All right, we're going to move into executive session. I'm required to state that any person or persons who is to be discussed in executive session has been notified in writing in advance of this meeting and is given the opportunity to have such discussion in open session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-46-5A1. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to enter an executive session per Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-46-5A1 for discussion in terms of principal appointment and compensation.
Are you doing that here? Do you want us to leave? Or are you coming back?
So,
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Everybody move to it. All right, the next item is, or action item is consider and vote on the principal contract. Rather than entertaining a motion to start out. We just reviewed the contract within executive session. This will be published, if it's approved, it will be published online along with a copy of the job description. Is there anything that anybody would like to, Lori?
Yes, Dr. Power, would you please remind us again what the factors are that are supporting the salary that we're proposing in this contract with the candidate?
The candidate that's being considered tonight is a seasoned principal. They've been a principal in another district for the last 12 years. They have been a middle school teacher. They were a middle school math coach. They worked and certified in science at the middle school level. They were also an elementary teacher. And as I said, currently they are an elementary principal in the K-6 school, and they've been in that position for the last 12 years. excellent record there. They are the person that is the go-to in that district for guidance to some of the other elementary principals. So their background based on the job posting that we had, based on the criteria that was set by the district for what they're looking for in a candidate, they met all that criteria and came with a great deal of experience to the position, and that's why I think that compensation should be at the level. This is not somebody who's coming with very little experience. It's not somebody who comes that hasn't been at both middle school and elementary school level. They've been at both levels. They've had leadership positions prior to the principalship, with being a math coach and working with teachers. Has been involved in curriculum and curriculum development. They have, every box we're looking at, they have that kind of experience. So based on that, I think that it warrants that they be compensated at the level that I've suggested, which is, by the way, not more than what you were compensated in the form of actually a little bit less.
Okay. I have another question. Could you expand for us on why we are looking at an 18-month contract versus a 1-year contract?
Well, the reason for that is the person's coming in at the middle of the year, so we've got 6 months left till they're going to come in December, basically. So you've got 6 months to the end of the year. I don't think that somebody's going to leave a 12-year position to come 6 months to the district. So I'm suggesting that you're going to have those 6 months plus a year's worth of time with that person here, and that doesn't tie your hands as in case you make some determination that this person's not the person you want. Clearly, you have the ability to enter into a 3-year contract. You can't go beyond a 3-year contract. But I think that in this situation, you've got an opportunity here to see the fit, and that's why I'm suggesting 18 months. You clearly can make it longer than that if you want. I think that that's where I would start, and then in the contract, it talks about entering into a 3-year contract, so that person knows that there is an intent on your part, based on job performance, that you would be looking to have them stay for a much longer period of time.
Anything else?
Can we make sure that as we are, if we vote and do approve this contract, I'd like to request that on record, we keep all of the schedules in the back on record on both the website and publicly available. Job description, Schedule A, Schedule B, all within the contract. I know we didn't do that in the past. I think that's important to keep it.
All right, now, everybody all set? Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion then to approve the principal's contract as written.
So moved.
Is there a second? A second, Polly. Any more discussion? Is there any questions?
Mr. Chair, how does the authority of the school committee supersede the town charter on lengths of contracts for personnel?
How does our authority supersede town charter? Sid, I wish I could answer that question.
The town charter says that you cannot do a contract for less than 3 years, no more than 5.
State says 3.
I don't have anything to offer up to that. Kevin, what,
Well, the state law supersedes any town's charter. And state law limits any contract like this to 3 years, cannot be more than 3 years. So a local charter cannot trump a state law. So we're hemmed in by 3 years. It's absolutely in your discretion to pick a time shorter than 3 years, up to 3 years.
Does that answer your question? Thank you. Anyone else have anything to ask?
The terms of the contract, they are secret still?
No.
Okay, good.
Not, well, after they vote.
After we vote. Yeah. This will be uploaded online.
You're gonna tell us tonight, though, right?
Yeah.
Well, the only question I have is, she hasn't signed it, so.
Yeah, no, I would not recommend that. It can be offered, and she signs it, and then it can be posted.
So
It's
once
still
she
in the
signs-
negotiation stage, one party to the other.
So once she signs it, then it'll be made public. All right. Any more discussion? Motion made and seconded on the table. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. You need me to sign this? Do you have a copy for me to sign right now?
Witness, here. We need a witness, right? I just need to have a witness.
Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?